Hello, everybody. Dr. Yates here. I want to spend a couple of minutes introducing you to the Odyssey by Homer. The is one of two major works uh, by Homer that he's remembered for, and it's the second of two major ancient Greek epics. The first one being the Iliad, of course, and this is the second, and both of them are attributed to Homer. It's also, like the Iliad, one of the oldest existing works of literature, and it's still read by thousands of readers every year. Contemporary audiences still love the Odyssey, and it has had an enormous influence on not just the evolving Western canon, but world literature, East and West. Um, like the Iliad, the Odyssey is an epic poem. It's a narrative epic, a long narrative uh, work about heroic exploits, about specific heroes. Um, it's very elevated in tone. It's also very formal in the language that it's presented in. Um, and like the Iliad, and even back before the Iliad, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Odyssey was composed orally and transmitted orally before it was finally written down. Along with the Iliad, the poem is divided into 24 books, and this time, many people look on it this time as the sequel to the Iliad, because it takes place after the events of the Iliad and continues some of the themes and some of the characters that we met in the Iliad. The Odyssey focuses on one minor character that we meet briefly in the Iliad, and then he becomes the centerpiece and the main character of the Odyssey. Odysseus was part of the Greek army that faced down Troy, or marched upon Troy in the Iliad. Odysseus is the king of Ithaca, and really the crux of the Odyssey deals with his journey home following the events of the Trojan War and the storyline of the Iliad. After the war itself, which had already lasted 10 years, ends, it takes Odysseus an additional 10 years to get home. And that is the time span of the Odyssey. During these 10 years, he meets a number of obstacles, experiences, a number of adventures, encounters peril after peril, and the crew that he journeyed with and was returning home with began to be killed over this 10 years. So eventually he loses all of his crew members and he alone makes it back to the shores of Ithaca. But even that's not the end of his adventures. In his absence from Ithaca, and we're talking now about a 20-year absence, 10 for the actual war and 10 for the homecoming. Odysseus was assumed dead, and his wife, his queen Penelope, along with their son Telemachus, had to deal with and contend with a group of, for lack of a better term, suitors who wanted Penelope's hand in marriage, and thus they wanted the kingdom of Ithaca. And they competed with each other to win Penelope's hand. Now, Odysseus is seen kind of, and I'll talk about this a little bit more, is kind of an everyman. And this tale is also has qualities of a romance, but mainly Odysseus and his Odyssey are filled with, obviously, adventures. There's a great deal of longing on his part because he wants to get home. He wants to return to his wife and his son. There's a great deal of temptation that he has to undergo. There's also the struggle between good and evil. And there's victories and triumphs, and there's losses along the way. I think one of the things that makes the Odyssey an enduring classic is that it's remarkably human. Odysseus is a three-dimensional character. He has his highs, his lows. We see him in a positive light, but we also see him negatively at times. He's well-rounded. We see him change from the beginning to the end. But it's a human story, and about an ordinary guy who has to meet the struggles of everyday life, and I think there's a great deal of imagination that's wrapped up in the Odyssey that connects with even our contemporary ideas and imaginings. It's a thrilling adventure. It's got violence, it's got romance, but most of all it has struggle and it has victories. And really that's why it's such a human story, and why it's in the upper echelons of the Western literary canon. So I hope you enjoy the Odyssey. There's a lot of good stuff in it, and we'll be exploring a few more things in another couple of videos. So thank you, and we'll see you next time.